Good afternoon or good morning, depending from where you're connecting from. I see that we have a very international audience today. So I guess that there are people from several time uses. I'm Drew from Ironhack, and I'm really happy to be here today with Tiff. We're gonna talk about how ChatGPT and how to use ChatGPT and AI to become a better programmer. But we will do so in a couple of minutes. First of all, I'm gonna explain you how to use this platform on 24, since I know that it can be a bit new for some people. So first of all, you probably are seeing myself and Tiff on the
Mhm.
upper left corner of the screen where you have the media player. There, well, it's just a screen to see Tiff and I, so there's no more things there. But if you click underneath that to the bio box, you have a very important information there. You have the information about Tiff, and you can also connect with her on her Instagram with just one click. I really encourage you to do so and to check all her content because it's very cool. Underneath that, you have a very important box for this session, which is the Q&A box. There you can leave all the questions you have for Tiff from the session. So if you want to direct a question directly to her, please leave it there and she will receive them and answer them at the end of the session. At the middle of the screen, you're probably seeing the slides, and there you're going to see all the presentation. And on the other side of the screen, you have the related content box when you can find more about Ironhack. You can also see other webinars that we did about ChatGPT and web dev. Just feel free to like scroll them and see if any content is interesting to you and click on it. You have all the links there. And underneath that, you should have the attendee chat. If you don't have it, you should go to the toolbar underneath your screen and click on the bubble. And a chat will pop out, and just go there and feel free to share where are you connecting from, what are your expectations from this chat. You can share any message through there. If you want to know a bit more about Ironhack, and you want to know more about what do we do and what are our courses about, I'll advise you to click on the button "Get More Info." So our team will contact you and will explain you more about everything we do. And now I don't want to steal more time because I know that this presentation is really cool. So I will pass the mic on to her so she can introduce herself a bit more and introduce the session. So, Tiff, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. How are you today? I'm just looking actually in the main chat where everyone's coming in from. It's so exciting to see everyone from so many interesting places. We have Norway, Germany, New York. New York, I'm going to be in New York in 2 weeks. So maybe I'll see you on the street or whatnot. Portugal. Wow, this is incredible. And I'm actually here tuning in or speaking from Toronto, Canada. And I'm so excited to connect with you all. And when I was connecting with Julia and her team at Ironhack, one thing that I really got excited about, even before I started thinking about this talk, was for those of you, maybe some of you are familiar, maybe some of you are not, but I'm actually a coding bootcamp grad. And I always say this, but it sounds so dramatic, but it's really true. Having the opportunity to go to a coding school really changed the trajectory of my life, meaning it gave me more flexibility, freedom, growth. So it's really close to my heart. So I'm really happy to be here today. And yes, we are talking about how to use ChatGPT and AI for developers. And I was really excited to dive into this talk today because it's something that, of course, has been on all of our minds. I mean, you turn on the TV, you go on social media, and even if you're trying to avoid it, the first thing you are going to see oftentimes is about ChatGPT. And of course, with the recent release of ChatGPT v4, it's kind of the whole news cycle and social media cycle around it has come up again. So before we dive into it, though, I want to share with you a little bit about myself. So my name is Tiffany, but you can call me Tiff. I've been a software developer for 6+ years. I started at very small startup, then moved over to a very large company, to IBM. and then to another startup as well. And then from there, I actually recently transitioned into a developer relations role. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with developer relations, it's essentially combining the tech side, so the knowledge and expertise around coding and technology, with the educational side. And I thought this is like a dream role for me because it's the two things that I do with Tiff and Tech with my community, anyways. And that's what I do also outside of my day job is Tiff and Tech. I have built up a tech community. Maybe some of you are here today from following me on Tiff and Tech, and the purpose of Tiff and Tech is really to connect with others, have a community where you can ask questions freely, build each other up, and find inspiration in pursuing a career or path in tech. Before we jump into, though, talking about ChatGPT and really how to best use this as a developer, I wanted to highlight some AI tool alternatives to ChatGPT. And the reason I really wanted to do this and hone in on this before even getting into ChatGPT is because it feels like since ChatGPT, that was the beginning. We feel or we think it was the beginning of when developers started using tools related to AI, when in reality, we were using AI related tools for quite a while prior to ChatGPT. They just didn't receive the hype that ChatGPT did. And I believe that's because the tools that were used prior to ChatGPT really coming out were specific to developers. And now with the ChatGPT being specific to, well, not really specific, it's general, everyone is utilizing it. That is why the hype came up. The first one I want to talk about is GitHub Copilot, and this has been around for a while now. I really like GitHub Copilot. It's a tool that helps developers code quickly. You can access large data sets from public GitHub repositories. So any repository that is public on GitHub, it can access that as well and learn from it. So not only does it detect errors in your code, but you can also, even in the screenshot here, you can see you can highlight part of the code and get helpful suggestions on how to correct it. Now, I also want to note GitHub Copilot actually uses OpenAI's Codex technology and GPT-3. So the same technology that powers ChatGPT powers GitHub Copilot. And the next question I often get asked at this point is, well, what's the difference then, Tiff? If you are using, should I use ChatGPT or should I use GitHub Copilot? They use the same technology, or very similar, I should say. And I really want to highlight that with GitHub Copilot, the purpose of it or why it was developed was very coder specific. It was developed and designed with developers in mind. Whereas ChatGPT was built with a focus on collaboration or focus on as a chatbot, as the name suggests. So before ChatGPT was released, a lot of us have been already using GitHub Copilot. And once again, I really want to put this out here or highlight this because I think we as developers, when ChatGPT came out, all of a sudden, if I could insert a meme here, I would, of people running around like crazy thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to take over my job? When in reality, we've been using a lot of this technology and tools similar to some capacity for a while now. Another one that's very popular actually with larger companies, because of course tools that are used in companies have to be approved. And for some larger companies, this tool is approved, which is Tab 9. So this as well is an AI-powered code completion tool. Works very similar to the previous tool we just spoke about, GitHub Copilot, in the sense that it can help you quickly complete programming tasks, or you can give it a prompt, even if you can see here in the image, get random, forest model or load data from your CSV. And it also works with a ton or a variety of languages from Java, Python, C++, and I would say the majority of them, the more popular ones anyways. And this, once again, is a very useful plugin or tool to use when you are developing. And then, of course, we get to ChatGPT. And with ChatGPT, I know the news recently released ChatGPT 4. And if you've been following along, there's been some interesting things happening with with ChatGPT in the news recently, which I'll save for the end, and we can talk about this during the Q&A as well. One sec here. But for this, let's start by looking at a comparison of ChatGPT 3 and also ChatGPT 4. And I really wanted to put up this table here, and it's actually data from OpenAI's blog post, because it does a good job, I think, on a very simplistic level of breaking down the differences of the version 3 and 4. And you can see here, version 3 trained on 8 million conversation pairs. Okay, that sounds like a lot, right? It sounds like a big number. But with the release of version 4, it's trained on 15 million conversation points. So that's almost double, essentially, just under double. And you can see how much more powerful GPT-4 is. And I'm curious to hear, actually, while I'm doing this, let's see in the chat here. Have any of you been trying out ChatGPT-4? If you have, give a thumbs up or send an emoji in the chat. I'm curious to hear. All right, as people are doing that, or has anyone yet? Or interesting. So far, no thumbs up. So I'm curious to hear. But yes, so ChatGPT version 4 trained on 15 million conversation points. So what does this mean? Well, with version 4, maybe you have seen on Twitter or memes about this, or just even if you're going on their documentation, you can see on it how you can literally give it, say, a diagram or an image, and it will output that. That's pretty mind-blowing. When I first saw that, I thought, what does this mean for me? What does this mean as a developer? If you can literally give it a design or an image and it can take that and code it, how does that affect my job? And we'll touch on that more closer to the end. But I think it would be unnatural if a lot of these questions didn't start coming up for us. So let's dive in more to GPT-4. It's a natural language processing model. So it's developed, as many of us know, by OpenAI, and it's a powerful tool for understanding and generating human-like conversations. It's based on the GPT-4 model, and it's a transformer-based language model that has been trained on a large corpus of text. So in this case, if I go back a slide, 15 million conversation points. Now let's kind of highlight some improvements here of ChatGPT-4. So one being increased accuracy. It has improved accuracy in natural language processing tasks. So for example, if you used to give ChatGPT-3 a prompt, say schedule in my to-do list for the day, and then you give it would oftentimes be very wordy and it would take a while to get to the point. Whereas with ChatGPT v4, it immediately understands exactly what that prompt is. And rather than being wordy and lengthy, it will actually give you exactly what you're looking for in a very concise way. For me, when I was testing this out and playing around with it, it felt very different than ChatGPT 3 in the sense that it felt more like I was interacting with a human versus a machine. The queries are faster. So for those of us who have used ChatGPT 3, excuse me, for those of us who've used ChatGPT 3, sometimes when I'm waiting for it to respond, I might just take a sip of coffee or check my phone, but there was a lag in the response. And then also too, of course, more natural conversations. So this is kind of what I was honing in on from my first point. It really feels more like you are having realistic conversations versus knowing you are talking to a machine. Oh, here I see here. Oh, we got lots of thumbs up actually that I've tried GPT-4, signed up right away when it came out. Oh, wow, very cool. Applied to a job with ChatGPT. I'm just reading the chat now. Very cool. A lot of thumbs up. Very cool. All right. So before we dive into how to use ChatGPT, let's talk about how not to use this. And I put this before the how to use it because I think learning how not to use it is actually almost more important than understanding how to use it. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. Robert Martin, who is a very, very incredible and famous author, he has some really wonderful quotes, and one being, bad code can be cleaned up, but it's very expensive. And I wanted to add this in here because it's a reminder I think we should all have on our desk, or I'll take the note and put it on my desk, because oftentimes, too often, we write code and then we tell ourselves we're going to come back and clean it up, or we're going to come back and fix it, only to never do so. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but there's been too often times when I'm working on a project at an organization and I see who made the changes to the code, and I ping them on Slack and I go, "Hey, I see you wrote this code. What is this portion of your code really doing? Like, what was the purpose of it?" And they go, "Oh, I was rushing. I'm not really sure anymore if we need it." And then the amount of backtracking work we need to do to ensure if it was accurate or if it's needed, and testing on it. It happens both at small organizations and big companies, more than we'd probably like to admit. The first thing not to do with ChatGPT is do not rely on it solely to learn how to code. Now, you might be thinking, what do you mean, Tiff? This is a tool that I can use to learn. Why would you include this? For a very specific reason. And the reason is, yes, it's a great tool to help you learn how to code, but do not rely on it to learn how to code. If you are relying on it to learn how to code, it's essentially the equivalent of being stuck in tutorial hell, as the saying goes, meaning you're in your comfort zone. You're seeing the results, you're seeing the output, but you're not actually taking action on that. So rather than building things on your own, getting stuck is probably one of the most important things, the most critical things when you are learning to code. Because what it does is it actually teaches you how to problem solve. And as we all know, with coding and programming, being a logical thinker and problem solver is absolutely key in long term success. So, if you are relying on a tool that is outputting code for you, solving all your problems for you, you're probably not setting yourself up for long term success. And that brings me to my second thing not to do with ChatGPT, which is don't use it for complex code development. And I kind of alluded to this in my first point, meaning it's not a substitute for code that requires a lot of context. So don't start inputting that you want to build the next Facebook in ChatGPT. It's going to be very janky at the best of times, but the reality is, code that needs a lot of context is best done manually and for a reason. This code is oftentimes we are working in teams when we think about working at an organization. And as we are working in teams, code needs to be readable for other developers. And if we are relying on something like ChatGPT, that being said, if your company even allows the use of something like ChatGPT, what we are doing is we aren't structuring how our code is written. We are allowing a machine to do that. And yeah, you might argue, well, Tiff, it's writing it better than me. But who's to decipher if it's better or worse than you? You know your company's style, or if you're just making a freelancing project, you know your style, your readability style, your team style, and you want to ensure you're aligning to that. So you are keeping communication doors open. Okay, so that brings us to then, how would we use ChatGPT as a developer? And I added in another quote here by Robert C. Martin, and it's clean code always looks like it was written by someone who cares. And I thought this was a really good quote to add in here, going based on what I just spoke about, which is having code that feels personalized almost. And I know that sounds so strange to some of us, but when you are working on teams or even building a project for yourself, the more you can understand what your code is doing, I guarantee it will save you so much time in the long run. So here's some ways you can use ChatGPT to your benefit. Use it as a developer to make you a better developer even. One being to find mistakes in your code. So what I like to do, for example, is as I am coding, say building a project, and I face an error, a bug keeps on coming up, I'm seeing the logs. What I will do is, excuse me, I need some water here. This is what happens, Toronto in the winter, it's very dry. What I will do though, as I am encountering a bug in my code base, I will take that error message that I'm getting, give ChatGPT some context. So maybe I will share 2 or 3 lines of code if needed in the snippet of it, and then also to this is the error it is producing. That is one way where you actually share a bit of your code and then the error as well. That will hopefully help you get some insight. The goal shouldn't, once again, be to necessarily solve your problem, meaning it shouldn't be to output the right code, although that's great too. But it should rather be that you can utilize ChatGPT in a way where it will help explain what the error is in a very human or friendly like way. It sounds very strange to say human and friendly like way when talking about AI, but this is where we're at in 2023. So that's one way I like to do it. Another way that I really like to do it is also I will ask ChatGPT, I won't actually put the code in, but I'll just put the error message in. And I'll say, can you explain this error message to me in a way like a software engineer would, but in a friendly way, or in a like I am a child, getting very specific with my prompts. So yes, I want you to explain it to me like a software engineer, but like a software engineer would explain it to a child. And I do this all the time. Maybe it sounds funny, but I get it to explain things to me like a child, because then it's broken down in the most simplistic form that really helps me, like, oh, of course, I knew what that is. Now, this really depends on what kind of errors you are getting, so it might not work across the board, but these are 2 ways that I really like to use it when I'm coding. The next way I like to use is finding unusual patterns in my code base. So what does this mean? For one, understanding edge cases in my code. So is there vulnerabilities in the code? Could it have been built in a better way? And not even could it have been built in a better way, but what are some other options? Maybe this is what I think is best, but let's go back and forth. It's almost like your pair programming. Without having to get on a call with one of your teammates, you can just utilize ChatGPT, meaning, hey, this is what I have. Or if you're prompting ChatGPT, rewrite this code in more in less lines, or rewrite this code with a specific version of something, different things like that. And then you don't necessarily need to take that code and paste it directly in your code. But what I would do is rather use it for inspiration. See maybe if there's some areas where the tweaks were really improved and where you could utilize that as well. The other thing you can use it for is architectural and infrastructure options. And this is great if you are a freelancer or thinking of freelancing anyways, depending on where you're at in your development journey. And what it will really do is you can prompt it, and I haven't seen this really talked about much, but it's a very interesting thing to do, is you can prompt it by saying, this is the project I am building, giving it very specific details about how you want it to scale, what you expect for users, different technical requirements. And in turn, you can say, what would you advise the best tech stack to be? And it will output the best tech stack it thinks. Now, once again, use this carefully, use this for inspiration, but it will give you an idea of different tech stacks out there that you might have not even considered for this project. This is a great way to go, I think, if anyone is really starting out in the freelancing world. And as you know, when you're freelancing, there's a lot of options, and your clients are pretty sometimes demanding, wondering, hey, what's going on? What tech stack are you using and why? So this is a great way to really shorten, I would say, the research process. Also, it's interesting when I was going to include a slide on this, but I'll just speak candidly to it. I saw on Twitter again that there was an engineer, a software engineer, who used ChatGPT to input their Solana contract, so their smart contract, and said, find vulnerabilities in this. So looking at it from an architectural standpoint of, are there vulnerabilities that could be hacked in my smart contract? And ChatGPT 4 was able to share with them a ton of vulnerabilities. Now, this engineer was already aware of these vulnerabilities because apparently it had been hacked in the past, but it just wanted to see what the results would be if they used ChatGPT 4 and what the vulnerabilities it would suggest or it would share with. And it was pretty accurate, apparently. So that's just one of the ways when we start thinking even too about cybersecurity and how that impacts it. And that's not somewhere I'm going to touch on in this presentation because I think there's a lot of conflicts there. But it's just very interesting that we can really use it from a learning standpoint as well to understand what kind of architectural structure we are building out for our code. And this is my favorite way that I use ChatGPT. I use it this way. I use this probably the most out of any ways, which is unlocking technical concepts with ChatGPT. And yes, this presentation is all about coding and programming, but I really wanted to include this as well because as developers, especially as we grow in our career, we're taking on more responsibility. We have to be learning at a very quick rate. And I'm sure some of you are sitting there being like, yeah, Tiff, I know it's never ending. I never am going to learn all what I need to learn, or that's how it feels, anyways. So, what I will do is I started using it to explain technical concepts to me that I might have trouble understanding or wrapping my head around. So, I'll give you an example of this. Recently, I was reading more about quantum computing. And having no background in quantum computing, when you initially start researching, so I started by Googling. My first instinct wasn't to use ChatGPT, but it was to go to Google, as most of ours still is. And I started Googling about quantum computing and even typing into Google, explain what quantum computing is to me, like, a child or like a dummy, one of those kind of prompts. Google did okay. There were some, but then I was like, you know what? This is taking a lot of time for me to be able to, at this point, I understood what quantum computing is, of course, but be able to find a way to explain it in a simple way. So I thought, let me go to ChatGPT and see what it can come up with. So I prompted ChatGPT. I said, explain to me, like I am a child, what quantum computing is in story format, because I really like stories and I feel like it's one way that I always relate to things. So that's another thing. You can use prompts that are very based on how you learn best. It's not what you think you want to get out of it, everything you can, versus trying to appease it, if that makes sense. So it output this beautiful story for me, like I was a child, about what quantum computing is. And I still remember the story to this day, which is pretty incredible. I mean, I prompted it, I think it was a few days. It wasn't that long ago, but still I could repeat the story. And it's really interesting just how memorable it was for me versus when I spent so much more time going down the path of Googling and trying to learn that way. So I think you can definitely utilize it in ways for unlocking or understanding technical concepts in a way that you learn best. As developers, one thing we learn very early on, oftentimes painfully we learn it though, is how we learn. Especially if you are coming from a completely different background, which I know a lot of you typically are, especially if you are going the coding bootcamp path like myself or self-teaching path. It's because at some point in our journeys, we've discovered coding and we're like, this is incredible. I want to build the future with this. And looking for different ways to do so. And it's one of those things that you have to learn how you learn best because there are so many different ways, whether it's visual, whether it's through conversation, maybe it's through reading, maybe it's through actions. But once you've figured that out, you can use these tools, AI tools like ChatGPT, to really serve you in the best way possible. So on that note, I wanted to also talk about some ChatGPT prompts for developers. Now, these are just some prompts that you can either screenshot this next page or save this PDF and utilize or start tinkering around with. These are prompts that I use all the time. So some include explain this code to me. So getting it to simply explain a piece of code for you. Maybe this, sometimes even too, if you are learning a new language or taking a tutorial and the instructor maybe just isn't doing a great job of explaining it in a way that you understand or that you learn best, you can try prompting it through that. Another is comment this code. So sometimes we're lazy, or once again, I'll speak for myself, and commenting code is the last thing I like to do. So using it to help comment code, especially in personal projects, I don't like to comment code. Or if I do, I ramble on in my code comments and only to come back to and be like, why did I leave these big comments? Whereas if you get ChatGPT to, it can be more precise. Also to generate test cases. I don't know about you, but writing test cases is something I really did not, that's probably my least favorite thing to do, although it's extraordinarily important. And getting ChatGPT to do some of those heavy lifting work is a great way to do it as well. Then generating documentation. I found this to be so-so. I haven't really fully explored generating documentation other than through a few paragraphs here and there. It is helpful though, but you have to specify the tone you want it to generate in. And still then I find it to be something you really need to monitor closely. This is a really great one though, generate regexes. This is something that I have spent hours on prior to ChatGPT, using some of the tools online to input what you want your regex to be. And then sometimes it outputs correctly, sometimes it doesn't. There are so many different patterns that you can use that this has been an extraordinarily helpful one. And then also too, as I mentioned in my previous slide, explaining technical concepts in a very simple and easy to understand way. All right, let's get to the last question here, which I really wanted to add. I kind of added in last minute, which is AI going to take over developer jobs? And I'm sitting here today, I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not talking about 50 years, 100 years. I don't know what that looks like. I'm talking about the next few years, today, and the future, foreseeable future. Here's how I like to sum it up. ChatGPT, for where it is at now, yes, it is pretty good at coding, as it is for writing legal documents, as it is for writing medical cases or passing medical exams. It's really affecting everyone's area of expertise, not just developers. And I say that because, for me, anyways, for some weird reason, that makes me feel more at ease. The second thing I really want to highlight about this is I think this question really comes up more for more junior developers than it does senior. And let me explain why. When you are a junior developer or you are just starting out in your coding journey, you typically start with the foundations, or you should. Whether it be, now this is just one example, there's many different technologies you can start with, but say HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. You are starting from the basics. And when you are learning the basics and starting out from the most simple of terms, and you see that there is this AI that can do that already for you, it kind of it feels a little devastating. You're like, well, why am I learning this when this tool already does it? Is there a point? And I really want to highlight and emphasize that you need to have a strong foundation. You need to spend time learning the basics on your own, because you will get to a point where you surpass what ChatGPT is an expert in. And maybe this is system design. Maybe this is the best way to structure your code. Maybe this is the best way to explain code. However it looks, there are so many different ways that you as a human will bring unique advantages to software engineering. And I really wanted to highlight that because I think a lot of times when we are first learning how to code, this is a question that's currently being asked, and I try and put myself in those individuals' shoes. Like, if I was learning code today and AI could code as well, would it be kind of, how would I feel? And I think for a second I'd feel like kind of bummed out. But then I would look at the bigger picture. So I really encourage you to look long term and think, yes, you might be learning something today that an AI can do as well. But when you look ahead, that you have to learn this foundation in order to build on top of it and where you will be in the future, it's a necessity. So absolutely use this tool to your benefit to help you learn and help you build the best possible, and you will continue to grow and succeed. All right, I feel like I've done enough talking here. Let's get to some Q&As. All right, I'm going to start by going in. Let's go to the inbox. So just as a reminder, you can leave your Q&As in the inbox. It's a separate chat from the attendee chat. So let me go into it here. Give me a sec. This is, like many of you, this is my first time using this platform as well. Great question, Miguel. Were the vulnerabilities of the Solana example already disclosed? Oh, 1 second. Already disclosed in the web. That's part of GPT training corpus. So I'm just saw this on Twitter, so I'm not an expert in this, Miguel. However, I would definitely encourage you to search it up. For me, when I was doing reading on it, I literally just searched up ChatGPT finding vulnerabilities in Solana. I don't know. I'm not certain on that, so I'm just going to leave that at that. But I believe my initial instinct or my initial reaction is, though, it wasn't specifically disclosed, but maybe others similar had been. That's how I read when I looked into it. All right. Kelly Wright. Sorry, as the questions come in, they get pushed down. So as I'm reading, they do. Excuse me. Okay. Can we use ChatGPT using our own database, our own knowledge database? So I'm wondering, Eric, are you referring to if we can connect ChatGPT to a database? Can we use using our own knowledge database? Do you mean like connect to a database? I'm not certain, but if that's what you mean, there are tools out there that use OpenAI, not necessarily ChatGPT, but use GPT-3, so OpenAI's technology, where I actually shared one recently. It's a SQL tool. And what you can do is input text and it will generate SQL queries that you connect to your database. So there's a lot of tools out there past ChatGPT that are using this technology that you can really access based on what specific needs are. Oh, Anastasia, this is a great question. Okay. If you were to start your tech journey all over again, what language or languages would you focus on, bearing in mind what works best in the AI space? So, if I was to do everything all over again, just for context, my first stack I learned was MERN. So, it was Mongo, it was Express, React, and Node. So, a JavaScript based stack. And that has been very beneficial throughout my career. JavaScript, when I was learning how to code many years ago, was I think at like its peak in demand. Like it was just, I mean, it still is, but it was so in demand. It was really, Python wasn't as in demand at the time. It was always ranked #1 on Stack Overflow. It was in its prime. It still is, but you know what I mean. So if I was to do it all over again, I would still honestly, oh, it's a tough question because there are so many different factors. So I don't want to prescribe something based on my experience. So just take this with a grain of salt. But for me, I'd probably do JavaScript and or Python. Python, if I was going into the AI space, would probably be the way to go. Especially, talking about natural language processing and utilizing Python for some of that as well. Python is what I have been primarily using outside of work just for tinkering around and building because I think it's really incredible. And also, too, it really touches in the AI space. I'm sorry about that. I have one sec here. This is what happens when you do a presentation live. There's noise in the background from my two dogs who just got home. I apologize about that. All right, let's see what else. All right, so Mostafa, as I understand, that GitHub Copilot uses the same technology of ChatGPT. So is there any version for that use? For example, ChatGPT now has ChatGPT-4. Are they building the tool over GPT-4 or are they separate? This is a great question. So they are separate implementations. So when I was doing reading and research, and if someone knows different, please let me know in the comments. But when I was doing research to prepare for this talk, and I was really curious about this exact question, so it's a really great question. One of the things that I was wondering is, as I mentioned at the beginning of these slides, that GitHub Copilot uses the same GPT-3 that ChatGPT was built on. Is there a difference now with GPT-4? From my understanding, Copilot still uses GPT-3, the older version. I didn't see anywhere that it's been updated, but I'm sure very shortly it will. I think some companies are kind of holding back, waiting to see what happens next. That's where I'm at. But so yes, right now it does not. This is a great question. Maxon, what currently inspires you more, development itself or development-related content creation, and why? You know what? I would say 50-50, meaning some days, as a developer, some days it's just it's tough sometimes, especially when you're working on a feature and you're stuck and you feel like you've been stuck for so long and you're not getting anywhere. Then, of course, the content creation side excites me more. But then that moment where you solve what you are working on is just an incredible moment, that aha moment. And I really like working with others, collaborating and educating others. That's why I transitioned from software developer to developer relations. So I also get that educational part of it too, and doing things like this with you all. So that's a question I just can't answer because I like them both so much equally, I would say. Let's see, what else do we have here? Do. Okay, this is a great question, Paul. What are the legal implications of using a large amount of ChatGPT generated code in a commercial site, if any? And I really wanted to touch on this as well. So, Paul, I'm glad you brought this up because do not use ChatGPT in your work if you work at a company unless you have gotten permission from your manager. There are a ton of implications legally around this. A lot of companies are just figuring this out as this has all come up very quickly, and then now they're figuring out, can we use this, can we not use this? So I would say the best thing to do is do not use it for commercial or projects that you're working on your company unless you've gotten permission from your manager. However, that being said, if you're a freelancer and you are building something, I personally don't see an issue with you using code from it. Of course, modifying it to your own to some degree. It's that example, if you're freelancing, is different than if you're working for a company and you need permissions from them. I would treat ChatGPT like any other tool you would when you are coding, meaning ensuring you get permission from your manager. All right. Let's see here. I'm just scrolling through. What else do we have? Work with licenses. Okay, Kenta, how does GitHub Copilot work with the licenses on the GitHub repos? I'm not sure what their technology works on the back end side of things, but right now it's with public repos. So I'm not sure how that works with licenses. It might be something that they dive into on their website, but it's been one of those tools I've used a ton, but I haven't actually looked into their licensing standpoint as far as how they're able to do so. Excuse me, Valentina. If you could do a boot camp, this is more boot camp related. If you could do a boot camp all over again, what would you look for now? What were some of the regrets or cons? All right, this is a great question because I think some of you are considering going to boot camp anyways. So let me see here. So what I would do if I was to do a boot camp all over again, I got exited out that. One thing I would do if I was going to boot camp all over again is see what their community looks like. So I think that was something that I was an early boot camp grad. I went to, and I didn't go to Ironhack, although I wish I would have, but this was many years ago and I didn't even know about Ironhack. So when I went to one, I wish I would have asked more about the community, meaning what support do you have for graduates? What do people who have graduated from your program look like? Like, meaning where are they now? What are they working on? Because that's something that is very important. And I found as an early boot camp grad from a different coding boot camp that there wasn't much support afterwards. And I think learning how to code is difficult, but then finding your first job in tech coming from a non-technical background initially is very difficult as well. And you need as much support and community as you can get. So that is something I would definitely look for. What was the other part of this? Cons from the boot camp. That would be the con. That would be the main con, I would say, is really understanding the sense of community. Community is everything. And that's really around the time when I started Tiff in Tech, was because at that point I felt very alone and like I didn't have a community and I didn't want others to feel that way. All right, let's see here. What else do we have? Let's see, we'll answer one more question here. Kelly Wright. Hi Kelly. Where can I learn more about how to use ChatGPT? I would say if you are interested in learning more about ChatGPT specifically for development purposes, then honestly, just start Googling different resources. Nowadays, there are so many different courses online that the issue isn't finding more resources, but finding good resources, meaning I would suggest, I always look for courses that have a lot of reviews, and the reviews are, I love Udemy, so I go to Udemy a lot. So I'm sure there are a ton of courses on Udemy, even YouTube as well. With YouTube though, before I take a course on YouTube, I always kind of filter or sift through the comments just to see what the overarching feeling about the tutorial is. But just start researching online, be specific as possible. There's a lot out there. So I would say just be weary about which one you choose versus worrying about if there's enough out there. So I know we're at 1:45 here. Julia, after this answer, I'll jump in to say bye. Perfect. Thank you all so much. It was so wonderful to connect with you all. And I'll definitely answer more. Feel free to DM me or message me, and I'll do my best to answer more questions.
Thank you very much for this session. It was amazing. It was really eye-opening, and I think all the audience can agree with me. If you want to share how did you feel about this session on the comments, feel free to do so with an emoji, and this way we can have a little bit of feedback from you. Thank you, Tiff. It was really amazing. I know that we have some questions that were not answered, and I will encourage the audience to DM you or to send them to my email, which they will receive on the follow up email. Let us know also if you would like to have more sessions with Tiff as well, so we can take that in consideration. I heard some questions about all the afterwards of a bootcamp. I will encourage you to get more info about Ironhack. We have teams that are just outcomes focused, so they would help you with all the process of the after studying. Just click on the get more info and get in touch with our teams and see our syllabus and our program and all the courses that we have. So, Tiff, once again, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you to all the audience. Just a reminder that you will get this session recorded in an email tomorrow. If you don't get that email, you can rejoin also this session with the reminder email you got this afternoon. You can join it at any time with the join here link. So, see you soon and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. See you soon.
Bye
Bye.
bye.